Good morning and welcome back to Ideas xLab's Uncovering Livestream powered by Switcher Studio. I'm Josh Miller, the co-founder and CEO, and today we are diving into intersecting identities and curiosity when it comes to cultural differences. Next week, we were planning on featuring a discussion with Hannah Drake on spaces, and we're actually going to be moving that discussion to February 19th because she is going to be going to New York next week to do the Moth Story Slam from the main stage. So we will have our live stream next week, but we'll be announcing those guests in the next few days. So to dive into our discussion today, and this live stream leads up to our Uncovering for Inclusion event, which is on February 25th. We're doing it with Open Eye Advisors at Story Louisville. So we hope that you'll go to ideasxlab.com/uncovering to learn more about that. But as we dive into the discussion today, I'm joined by RaeShanda, Carlos, and Kameo. But to kind of frame up our discussion today, RaeShanda, I want to reach back a little bit to an experience I had in 2018, which was the Aspen Institute's Executive Seminar. Okay. And so this, the seminar brings together an international group of leaders for a week of text-based dialogue, really thinking about what is a good society and what is our role as leaders in communities and in corporations and running businesses and nonprofits in shaping a good society. And one of the things we used for that discussion was James O'Toole's Executive's Compass. The question that it really brought to mind was the trade-offs in the way that we all make decisions between things like liberty and equality and community and efficiency. And it was such a good reminder as we head into our conversation today around the role that all of our intersecting identities play in the way we make decisions, how our cultural understanding comes to bear in how we engage with people and how we seek to understand the way they make decisions. And one of the conversations that really reminded me of why that's so important is as we were thinking about this compass, we were also talking about AI and what happens when, if and when we get to a place where people have a 20-hour work week. What do you use all that extra time for, right? And so in my mind, I'm thinking you can spend more time with friends, you can start new businesses, you can impact your community in great ways, spend more time with family. And there was someone else who had a very different mindset. They thought if we had all this extra time, there would be more murders, there would be more drug use, and there would be more violence. Wow. And so if we don't seek to understand what the underpinnings of each of those worldviews are, it becomes really difficult to understand each other and to be able to collaborate. So that's a little bit of framing I just wanted to have as we dive into our discussion today. But you and I finally got to meet in real life in 2018.
Yes.
Brought together by Louisville Business First 40 Under 40. Yes. And I have so both enjoyed but also benefited from having you as a person in my life who it leads with so much of the experience that you've had and really seeks to make a positive and inclusive impact on people.
Yes.
So that's where I want to start. So you have so many different facets to all that Rae is,
right.
From veteran, lesbian, a Black woman, a mom, etc.
Right.
So could you talk about how all of those pieces informed your values and the creation of your business, and if there's a motto that you live by?
Well, I can answer that last question. It is definitely a motto that I live by. Every day is not a good day, but every day is worth it. That is something that I say all the time, not just being an entrepreneur, but being a parent, being a wife, owning a business. All of that comes into play, but because I am so multifaceted, I have to understand that when I walk in a room, right, the first thing that people see is my skin color and my sex. So I am a Black woman when I walk in immediately. Because I am not masculine presenting, people do not assume that I am gay. Because people are not close to me or know my background, they don't know if I'm a mom or a veteran. So the thing that people see the most, they also see that I'm plus size. So there is several layers to that, and people treat you different depending on not just who you are, but what they think you are. So it shapes how I dove into All Is Fair. I always tell people I don't know where the name came from. But over the years, we'll be celebrating 7 years of my company in March. All is Fair in Love and Fashion really now speaks to everything that I do. It is a women empowerment movement through fashion. We celebrate women of all shades, races, heights, ages, with the implementation of Aging Like Fine Wine for my 40 and up models. So it is about representation on the runway, having our first transgender model, having our our gender fluid model this year. I'm so excited to have him. He's our first male. So things are always changing, and all is fair really just means what it says, all is fair. Anything goes in fashion. If people don't know that the LGBTQIA community runs fashion, then I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they will ever get it. It's just something that we are gifted with. So, but when I started All Is Fair, it was really just about, because I'm introverted, I let my fashion speak for me. When I walk into a place, people will approach you and dialogue start and conversation start. So it was just about fashion, and then it kind of moved and morphed into activism and just being very proud of who I am, all the layers of myself. So it really shaped my business in the way that I move through life. Just wanting to put everybody on notice that we're here.
Yeah, that really resonates when I think about so much of what I've seen come out from AIF.
Right.
In terms of the models I've been able to engage with, the imagery that you use, that's really consistent.
Yes.
And it opens so many more doors for people to see themselves. And when you all got married, we continuously joked about the idea of showing up extra.
Yes.
Right? Can you
yes.
talk a little bit about that as almost your wedding theme?
Oh my gosh. Being extra is just, I don't know. When I go through my baby pictures, I can't be blamed. It's really my mom's fault, because everything I see, and it's never a special occasion, not all pictures, but everything I had on was lace, and I had on gloves for some reason. She was just about presenting yourself well. Even at 3, 4, 5 years old, I said, "Mama, can I go to the playground in a lace white dress? What am I doing?" But I've always been, even in the military, I remember asking my drill sergeant, "Can I get my uniform custom?" Like, it was boxy. Can we get it fitted? He was like, "This is not this is not what we are here for, Private Johnson." But it is so a part of me because it makes you feel good. And when you feel good and you look good, you do good things. And I want that to flow. So for my wedding, I was not taking anything less than extra and over the top. And Josh, you gave from the hat to the custom outfit, you gave everything that I needed at the wedding, because I didn't want people, they always say, "Oh, I never want to outdress the bride," or "I don't want to overdo it." Number one, we were on national television, so I needed everybody to look like we were going somewhere. I don't know if we were at New York Fashion Week, but it was important because it just makes you feel good, and we were going to be seen and represented well. My one of the studio execs was like, "Your wedding was so diverse," and I love that. I love that. And that's another thing, that when people see me, they don't see all of my friends and family. I grew up in a multiracial family. My cousins are mixed. I am one of the darkest in my family. But we always loved on each other, no matter. So I didn't grow up with a sense of I have to be lighter or my lips have to be thinner. My uncles and aunts always made sure all of us knew that we're okay just the way that we are. So I pour that love on others.
And you can feel that. And I think that the way that you do that, and kind of bridging to my next question of, so much of your business is online, and you're reaching so many different people, and different people with different identities, different cultural understandings. So what is the role of curiosity, or how do you kind of step into and try to understand the broader groups that you're serving as you're building such an inclusive space for people to come into?
Wow, that's a good question. So my makeup artist, Tia, is Middle Eastern and she's Muslim. We talk all the time about cultural differences, and it's important because there are some people that when they found out that I was marrying a woman or that I'm a lesbian, some people, okay, they lost their mind. Like, this is like, I'm just jumping off the big four. But most people were like, okay, because they had a certain way that they thought that a gay woman would look, or that, I don't know, just being part of the community that because they couldn't tell, or how does that happen? Like, I just one day, fell into
Magic.
right. But so in doing that and opening their eyes, I also opened my eyes to the fact that it's okay not to be accepted everywhere. Because I don't want to go anywhere where I feel like I'm tolerated, only celebrated. So I don't miss anything or anyone that is like, okay, she can be here, but or if. That's showing up as your whole self. And if we can do that, because I'm also Christian, but people that blows their mind. How can you do, and I was like, there's it's layers to this,
Yes.
right? It doesn't interfere with my worship or how I feel. I talk to God every day. He's cool with me. I'm cool with him. So in learning others, and learning about cultural differences, even just here in the U.S., it has broadened my business, because I have found a way to maneuver. Fashion speaks to everybody, basically.
Mm-hmm. It does.
So they don't care. I thought I had a fear when I came out that I was going to lose customers. Didn't. And the ones that I didn't miss, because I gained so many more from the LGBT community. So it kind of balances itself out. But in that online space, you see me all the time. I love to be fully myself, and I can show up like that now because I feel free.
I love that you bring up the word tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
It was a few years ago, but there's a huge sculpture that spells out tolerated that someone wanted to bring to Louisville. And they were asking me what my thoughts were around it, and I was like, I don't want to be tolerated.
Right.
Like, if you don't want to be in the space with me, then like, let's figure that out. But tolerance isn't what I'm shooting for. That's not the banner I'm going for. That's not the movement I'm part of. Yes. So I love that you brought that up, because I want us to move beyond that.
Yes, please. We're only taking celebrations, not any tolerance.
Yeah. So we have one question that came in. So what recommendation, Rae, do you have for someone wanting to start a truly inclusive company or movement?
Ooh. Well, it's the same with any business, I would say. You just have to do it, right? Because we spend a lot of time focusing on making sure everything is correct before we launch, or making sure everything. One of the biggest things that I do, and I check in with not just my friends or family, but with my consumers, with the community. What does it look like for them to have an inclusive business? What does inclusivity mean? Because a lot of times people say that, when was 2018, 2019 was this big boom where all these companies, right, started hiring people to teach diversity training and inclusion. And I'm like, oh, and the person teaching them did not look diverse at all. Like, you have to start at the root of the problem. And a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the part of the community that is black, or the part of the community that is gay. They want to kind of just cover it with the blanket of inclusivity, and then whoever walks in, we're like, oh, they are included.
We're good.
Right, we're good. Or if they have one, we're like, oh, yay, we're diverse. No, no, ma'am, and no, sir. It is about once that person is included. So for me, my models are part of my family, and I had them sign a contract just 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't even a contract to me. At the bottom, it said, I am going to show up as my full self. I'm going to check in with my model sisters. I'm going to make sure that I'm okay and that they're okay. And I had them sign that, and they thought that was just so deep, right? But I was like, it's because we are here doing a thing together and representing each other. But when we leave here, we still battle. There are still things that we deal with. So I would say to anyone that's asking how to start is, one, to just start, and two, to do like a little group session of diverse people, like really diverse people, even people that you don't agree with. Why? Like, what is going on there? And it takes a lot, because there are a lot of people that are bigoted. There are a lot of people that are prejudiced, but if they are willing to be a part, then that's a talking point. How can, what about me or what about this movement bothers you? Because there is something in people that, I don't know how to say this on camera with that.
You can just say it.
People don't get that what I do has no effect on them. I tell that people all the time. You're going to be surprised if there's a heaven. You're going to be surprised who's in heaven when you're standing in line. And I was like, hey, girl, oh, you thought I wasn't going to be here? Okay. So there's a thing where people don't realize that they don't have a heaven or hell to put you in. And they just project whatever they're feeling onto you. So when you are looking to be inclusive and diverse, don't do it just for the title, but really mean it. And then follow up with those people. Don't just let them be a figurehead for your business. Oh, let's just drag out the transgender model anytime we want to feel like we're like, no. They have to be really a part of the culture that you're creating.
I love the idea of using your agreement or the contract that you talked about as a way to engage everyone that you're working with in that discussion.
Yes.
What does it mean to be here? What are the values of our group, and how are we going to embody those and support each other?
Yes.
So I absolutely love that, and I think that's a great recommendation.
Thank you.
So we are out of time for our segment right now.
Okay.
We thank you so much, Rae, for joining us
Of
today
course.
on our Uncovering live stream, and we will be right back with Kameo and Carlos. And welcome back to Ideas xLab's Uncovering live stream powered by Switcher Studio. Today we're talking about intersecting identities and the role that curiosity plays in understanding cultural differences. So we're moving into our second segment, and I'm joined by Carlos and Kameo. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And we, both of you, bring so much different understanding around who you engage with, how you engage in the world, and I'm really excited to have that with us today. You both also have different ways that you've expressed that or tried to engage people through artistic practice as a way to expand their understanding of the world. And so we're going to delve into both of those. Carlos, I want to start with you. I have known you for a number of years, and it's just been so interesting to see the trajectory that you've taken and how your art has played into it, your background as a veteran, you're now a lawyer, so there's so many different facets. You're a father. So that's where I want to start is, could you talk about how all of those different cultural understandings and identities really enable you both in life to engage with people, but also with reaching a broader clientele, and how that plays into being able to service a broad group of people?
Sure. So it has been interesting for me too, trust me. Especially since both my children were born in law school, and that's a challenge in and of itself. But, I think a big part of it is that different places where I've been, whether it was the military, working with artists when I was working with creative agents, and even in law school itself, all of it has shaped me so that I have a different understanding of what people need and what people really want from you when you're talking to them. I'll give you an example. In the segment before this one, you had a veteran, and as a veteran myself, I think she would agree with me that one of the most diverse places you could be in is the U.S. military. And I really love that you can go into a bar next to a military base and see people that are completely dressed differently in their civilian clothes, and from different cultures, backgrounds, and it's such a weird melange of individuals that you're like, who are those people? And 90% of the time, you'll walk over and they're all veterans. And I think the military has a very good way of, equalizing everybody. That and it shaves everybody's head and puts you in a uniform.
Yeah.
So that's a way of equalizing everybody. But it taught me a lot. I didn't have such a good understanding before I went into the military. I had like most people, I think, growing up, have a very tribal way of viewing life, but the military changed a lot of that. And then after coming out, law school itself was an interesting challenge. Everybody has a lot of opinions, and they're all right if you argue with them. And it gave me a lot of patience, I think is the word, and it made me realize that everybody is entitled to their opinion, right or wrong, whatever you may think. That's, I think, a value judgment, that it doesn't really talk about who the person is morally or ethically. It just talks about the lens that they see life through, and if you want to really develop a more, like you say, inclusive mindset, it's okay to, I told somebody one time that she was arguing about somebody with a very strong conservative opinion. And I asked her, I said, well, wouldn't you be intolerant if you're being intolerant of the intolerant people? And she realized right away that, yes, that is in itself a form of intolerance. And I told her, well, just listen to what they have to say. And then I think if you're genuinely curious, if you really ask people questions, you'll get deeper and deeper into who they really are. And you realize that their opinions are just one facet of themselves, not their whole entire being. So,
are there specific questions that you go to that you find help to kind of unlock some of those deeper learnings, deeper sharing in a way that gives you a different amount of information or a different kind of information than you may get from your more traditional questions?
Why? A lot of people like to know who, what, when. And they get very caught up in the rational and logical aspects of those questions. And I like to know why. I like to know why you are the way you are, what made you. My family, my wife to this day still makes fun of me that I'm the kind of guy that I'll talk to a stranger in a bus stop. I'll talk to a homeless person. I was a bellman at the Brown Hotel on 4th for a long time, and I would, on the slow times during the day, I would start a conversation with a lot of the homeless people that were walking by, and I got to know very, very personally 8 of them that were Cuban. I didn't even know there were Cuban homeless people in Kentucky, and that was interesting. And a lot of people in my family and a lot of my friends always say, well, you just walk up to somebody and start talking to them, and I say, yeah, that's literally what I do. So why is always a good question, and I always like to ask people about their childhood. I think a formative part of who we are really does come from our childhood, and in me, a lot of that curiosity is my love for storytelling. I love telling stories myself, as you know. And I love learning about people's stories. I like to actually learn and listen to them, and you'll meet some very, very interesting people out there. My wife once told me I should write a book at some point, the people I've talked to, and just put all the different conversations that I've had. And I think a lot of that comes from my grandpa. He was a big storyteller when I was a kid, and he lived with us. He was a huge influence in me. And I think I loved watching him interact. And He didn't just tell stories, he used to get stories out of people. He was very good at doing that. So.
Absolutely, and storytelling is something that has kind of broadly swept across all of our work. So I absolutely connect with the role that that plays, especially in the type of work you're doing with different people and seeking that understanding. And that ties into the work and the way that we were connected through Louisville Youth Group Kameo with Ideas xLab's Our Emotional Wellbeing, and this arts-based collaboration between Louisville Youth Group participants and artists. And so much of that has been around storytelling. And one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to have you here is you bring a Gen Z perspective, which the relationship to technology is different. The relationship to how you talk to and understand identity and culture is different. So I'd love for you to just talk about kind of how that has shaped you and some of your peers, and then the role of curiosity and kind of understanding all of these interconnections, and especially once you add technology onto that, there's this whole added layer. And so how does that play together?
So especially with curiosity, the thing that strikes everyone first is just like the internet has literally everything you can imagine, and then twice as much that you can't imagine. It's fantastic, especially when it comes to art and self-expression. In terms of identity, it's a good space, especially in our community, to be able to kind of start building your new identity. Because when you go online, we talk about like the negative effects of being anonymous online and how that can lead to hate. It also can lead to a lot of good things. When you're anonymous, like, it's not just your name that disappears, it's your whole identity. And so when you start exploring online and start expressing yourself online, building that new identity can be very exciting. I mean, especially if you're building an identity that you aren't in real life, like being trans, being in these LGBT spaces. The internet, like anything else, is a tool. It can be used to hurt or help. And in communities like ours, it can be really helpful when we start becoming more comfortable with that online identity. We can start transitioning into our offline identity, start transitioning towards that part of us that makes us happier. But that goes the same for the hate groups as well. They feel comfortable expressing these views online, and so they don't feel alone offline, and so that hate speech gets, well, basically legitimized.
So, and I hadn't actually heard the kind of that description of the crafting, like thought so tangibly about the crafting of new identity on the digital space to then bring out.
It happens naturally.
In as much as you just articulated. So I really appreciate that, and I think that also kind of ties into you all are working on a fashion show right now.
Oh yeah, so excited.
And you picked multiple target audiences, parents, peers. So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeking to channel through that fashion show in terms of understanding to the audience that you've selected?
Basically just inspiring. That's how I got into this space. This is how I'm comfortable, is that these youth that I work with are inspiring, and I want to share that with different people. I want them to be, like what was discussed earlier, their best selves, their extra selves. And so we want a space to not only like show off their talents and show off who these people are, but also celebrate who these people are. Especially when it comes to like high fashion and just like outrageous costumes and everything. I think it'll be really good for them, and I think it'll be really good for us, and I think it'll be really good for the community as a whole, just to see the youth participating in these grand things. So thank you for helping put that up.
It's been as much of a learning for us as it has been a collaboration, so we are so grateful to be partnering with Louisville Youth Group and with young people at Mazika Middle School on this project. And each of you brought with you either a visual piece or a written piece to share that really builds on what we've been talking about. So Carlos, I want to go back to you for a minute. You did a photography series.
Yeah.
And the way that you described it and kind of created it is so compelling, and it gets at these different layers. So can you talk a little bit about, and we're going to put one of your photos up on the screen, about that series and what you were seeking to do with it?
Sure. So it happened around the time that we met, and I had just transitioned out of the military and was exploring art and a lot of different things about identity. You know, so the series was kind of geared towards demystifying the way that people see veterans sometimes. You know, I think I told you you made me really dig in and find one picture from the series, and even find my notes from around that time. That was 6 years ago now, and a big part of it, in my notes I had where I was going with the artist statement was, you know, veterans a lot of times they get either romanticized or they get vilified or just exaggerated to the extent that they're caricatures of what they should be. And in my notes, I had a weird spectrum that I drew from Captain America to Rambo, and how you know, in the case of Rambo, he'll split a man in two with a bazooka. Captain America can do it with his bare hands, but refuses to. Mm-hmm. It's like the honorable beacon of veterans, if you will, and it was the actual technical aspect of it was two images. A portrait of the veteran just looking straight up into the camera, and just having a picture projected or interplayed in front of their face. That was the typical, I guess you would say, veteran macho shot, you know, of you in camouflage holding a rifle. Yeah, this is what even I felt victim, I guess you would say, to that romantic ideal. But a lot of it was to show, like you said, identity, you know, and get to the deeper sense of who people really are. That get out of that Hollywood media, who veterans are, and around that time, a lot of the other veterans that were also transitioning out of the military were suffering from PTSD, and I was working with a few of them because they were returning back from combat theaters. And we had a lot of media around whether it was active shooters, and when the identity wasn't known, a lot of people would think, oh, maybe it's a veteran or somebody that lost it in their mind. You know, we also had a lot of news around that time of veterans that actually had suffered issues and had reacted aggressively because they didn't have a good support group. And I wanted to, through that work, which I hope to go back to eventually sometime, you know, I wanted to just bring more awareness to that, to the sense that, you know, they're normal, regular people, just like everybody out there. And, you know, they're not this crazy, can lose it at any minute. What was it I heard somebody say, oh, if you don't take your happy pill, will you just kill all of us in the classroom? And I said, no, I don't even take a happy pill. It's just a cup of coffee. Thank you. But yeah, you know, a lot of those mythos that people have around what the veteran experience, which I think it's gratifying in its own way, and some of the most honorable people you'll ever meet either served or are serving currently. So.
Well, it really speaks to the complexity, right? You're going in with one kind of set of identities, and you're coming back having expanded those and having a whole different way of interacting. And so I really, some of these that I saw from this series actually had writing on them. And so I thought the contrast of how you were creating those layers really just visualized the layers that all of us bring.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's been explored through the writing with Our Emotional Well-Being. You all have been working with Talisha Wilson and Jazzy J, and doing a series of poems and written pieces. So would you mind sharing one, reading yours, but also talking a little bit about the inspiration behind that piece?
Sure. Let me find my page here. Here we are. Floating through ether, drifting from light, a checklist to follow for a fulfilling life. A step away from madness, all but a string pulling tight, up to the day I decided to fight. I began to seek answers, darkness brought to the light. It was not insanity, this idea was taking flight. The fears were sedated through meditation and thought. The answer was obvious, it was self-acceptance I sought. So the first part is basically how I felt before, not even just realizing I was trans, but realizing anything about the community. It is scary. It does feel like you're going insane because your identity not matching with yourself is terrifying. And if you don't have any concept of like why that might be, it just feels like, oh, I must be going crazy. And even if you learn about the concept of trans, of like this man became a woman or this woman became a man, it's hard to put that into like real terms and see that, oh, that's happening to me, that could even happen to me. So figuring that out is the first step, and that can be done a lot through, events like these, organizations like LYG, events like the fashion show, of just like realizing the connection between these people and how you feel. And that can be a real journey. And the second part is all about just like, once you realize that, realizing that it's nothing wrong with you, it's just like part of you. And you get so focused on trying to find out what's wrong with me, what's making me feel this way, what's making me feel different. Because if you're different, that means there's something wrong with you. Getting over that is another thing. But once you find what's wrong with you, having to come to terms with that there is nothing wrong with being trans, that there is nothing wrong with being different, that's a whole other step. And a lot of it, even if you know, just like I knew about the concept of trans, I didn't identify with it though. Just because I know there's nothing wrong with me doesn't mean it's hard to not internalize, because that's the world we live in, where if you're different, you're bad. And getting over that is a huge step. So getting out, just taking the first step of, I'm not insane, I have a goal of self-acceptance. And this isn't a poem about achieving self-acceptance. It's about a poem of going the first step to seeing that as my goal.
Well, thank you, one, for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And the line that sticks out to me was the checklist of a fulfilling life.
Oh yeah.
Because I think a lot of us grew up thinking that there was a set checklist, right? You did these few things and you're all good. And even going back to the idea of the compass that we talked about at the beginning, and how do our values and these complexities intersect? Mm-hmm. We also have to recognize that all of those evolve over time.
Oh yeah.
So the checklist that we may have had in the past, it may not be the same checklist, and probably isn't anymore. For what is a fulfilling life, and how are we playing that role? And I think that you talk about that really well. And this is a step, and there's always going to be more steps.
Absolutely.
So as a closing question for you all, and this builds on the poem, but what, in a sentence or two, what is a fulfilling life?
Going through the checklist.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Carlos, you want to go first?
Sure. I think for me is really understanding yourself and who you are and how you fit into the scheme of things in life. Like you mentioned in your poem, Kameo, self-acceptance is a way of doing that, and it depends on where you come from, your background. You could come from the gay community, from being an immigrant, refugee. A lot of the neighborhoods I grew up with were not very good neighborhoods, to put it mildly. And, accepting yourself, a lot of it when I was, for example, in law school, I didn't even know what it was until I read an article on it. I was feeling like I had like imposter syndrome, like I shouldn't be here, like, you know, these kids that are really intelligent and know how to articulate these arguments, and I'm just a kid that walked up the street, was how I felt. But I realized that I had something to add. I had a value in who I was, and I discovered that actually through interacting with people. And I think that a big part of fulfillment is realizing that we need other people, despite who they are, where they come from, their background, you know, opening us ourselves to them and allowing them to open themselves to us and tell us their stories, going back to storytelling. I think it's an important part. I think that's the ultimate fulfillment, is getting to share in the story that makes all of us us, you know. So.
All right. So I'm in college, IUS, and I'm studying philosophy, so that question like comes up a lot. Shout out to Dr. Wirt for letting me be late for class. The answer I keep coming to, and it's argued a lot, is just like there is no like meaning to life. It's just like you're there, and it's up to you to discover the meaning of life, what you want to do with your life, whether that's and we live in a country where like you can do whatever you want with your life. There's no societal pressure. Well, there are societal pressures, but there's no governmental pressures of this is what you have to do with your life. Improve the state is a large one in less free countries, I think. But here you can choose your meaning of life to be, I want to bring happiness to people. And you can do that through creating art, through helping people through charity work, or doing pro bono law work and stuff like that. Others are just, I want to find the most beautiful thing. I want to experience everything. And these are all meaning individuals' meaning of life, and they're all completely valid. If you're asking for mine personally, it's I want to improve the space that I live in for as many people as possible. And right now that means going into politics.
So we should stay tuned on
Absolutely.
what that will look like.
I will run
Okay.
for president one day, and you will all be happier. It's a promise.
I don't know, that sounds like a dictatorship. Are you forcing me to be happy?
Listen, you will be happy.
What if I like being depressed?
But one of the things you both talked about is people,
Oh, yeah.
right? Connection, being part of and sharing in stories, and not only finding fulfillment for you, but thinking about how are we making a good society? How are we participating in that? And that's one of the reasons that we started the Uncovering live stream, because we intersect on a given day with so many different types of people. Often they're not ever in the same room with each other. And so how can we make the space for bringing the knowledge and the understanding to bear? And so that's why episodes like today are so exciting, to have you all in the same room. So thank you, Carlos and Kameo. We are going to wrap up our show
Thank
for
you.
today,
Okay.
but we're so happy that you all were here with us. So we hope that you enjoyed our conversation. You can rewatch it on ideasxlab.com/uncovering, on our Facebook page. Join us on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Next week, tune in on Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next segment. And our final one on February 19th will feature Hannah Drake and a discussion around spaces. And all of this is leading up to our Uncovering for Inclusion workshop on February 25th with Open Eye Advisors at Story Louisville. So we are really excited to bring a lot of what we're discussing, some of the research, some of the arts-based activities into a workshop that really helps to facilitate dialogue and move the participants towards action. So join us next time and visit ideasxlab.com/uncovering to learn more. We'll see you soon.